With us on our decision maker line is Michael Tracy. Michael is a journalist who writes for Mother Jones, which is a left-leaning website. Ran into Michael at the Response on Saturday. In fact, he interviewed me, did a piece that appeared on their website yesterday. Michael, welcome to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Bryan, it's good to talk to you again.
Great to have you with us. And Michael, I understand that you cover kind of the religion beat for Mother Jones. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I cover, I guess you could say, a religion beat generally, not just for Mother Jones, but for a variety of outlets. And that's what attracted me to the Response. As you know, throughout the day, speakers were saying how historic it would be, how in years to come the Response would be looked back on as a seminal event in American political and religious life. So I thought it was an imperative for me to be there and assess things for myself.
Now, let me ask you, Michael, I'm assuming that you come from the standpoint of kind of secular fundamentalism. Maybe you could give us some kind of insight into what your particular religious or political leanings are so we can kind of get a bead on what kind of value system or worldview you brought into the room that day.
Sure. Well, I personally would not use the term secular fundamentalist, but it's fair to say that I don't share the beliefs that were espoused at the Response. I don't consider myself a Christian. I was actually raised a Catholic, but have since, after studying the theology and the theology of other religions, came to the conclusion that I am of a secular disposition and try to cover politics from that angle without any stake necessarily in the right or wrongness of a particular doctrine.
I almost felt sorry, Michael, for the secular types, whether I refer to them as secular fundamentalists, because I believe that, you guys have a certain set of fundamental precepts that you believe in just as strongly and passionately as we do. You're just as kind of biased toward your worldview as we are toward ours. And I thought, man, this has got to be painful for somebody who doesn't believe anything that's being talked about from the platform, doesn't believe in the person who's being praised, doesn't believe in the scriptures that are being read, doesn't believe in the prayers that are being offered. And to have to sit there and endure that for 7 hours, I had to be painful. What was it like for you?
Oh, I didn't find it painful at all, Bryan. I actually enjoyed myself quite thoroughly. I found it to be a fascinating experience. I talked to many decent, sincere people there, and I enjoyed, learning their stories and what motivated them to attend. And in fact, I think that's one of the reasons I find it to be such a shame that their participation in the event is being what I consider to be misrepresented by the organizers and those handling public relations for Governor Perry.
What do you mean by that, misrepresented?
Well, as you said, I was there, and my conclusion was that the only way the Response could be considered an apolitical event is if we somehow adopted an arbitrarily narrow view of politics. Of course, there was no outright talk of Republicans versus Democrats there, but there was definitely talk of problems that could be only rectified by political avenues, the political process, the legislative process. You might remember the song that was sung about abortion and how it should be outlawed, how a speaker declared that school prayer should be reinstated, that American foreign policy should be steered in the direction of supporting Israel. Now, whether or not you agree with any of those policy planks, they all can be only achieved by engaging with the political process. And what Governor Perry's spokespeople told me, and what you told me when we spoke, is that the event is apolitical only insofar as there was no overt endorsement of any political candidate. But obviously there were many political imperatives being discussed, and the notion that it was apolitical conflicts with what the attendees were telling me. For example, if you read my piece in Mother Jones, I spoke with a man who traveled from San Antonio as a member of Pastor Hagee's church there. And when I asked him, the first question I asked him was, do you regard this as a political event? And he said yes. And I asked him why. And well, he said that because he is dissatisfied with the current state of affairs regarding the U.S. government. And he felt that Governor Perry could address those problems if he were elected president.
Well, but it seems to me, Michael...
And this sentiment was echoed among many other people.
Yeah, and when you and I talked, we ran each other in the hallway there outside the event, and I explained to you that from our vantage point, there is no separation between God and government. Our nation was founded on a religious concept that there is a creator with a capital C, and that creator is the source of all of our civil rights, all of our political rights, all of our human rights. We have it's not a legitimate, genuine right unless it has come to us from the hand of the creator God. So you cannot, in the American political system, you cannot separate God from government, because the very rights that government has a responsibility to protect, the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to property, those rights are an unalienable gift to us from God. So you cannot separate God from the issue of fundamental human rights and the responsibility of government to protect rights that have been given to us by God.
Sure, Bryan, and this might surprise you, but I personally have no problem with elected officials expressing their belief or disbelief in any religious doctrine, be it Christian or otherwise. I think all different voices are welcome in a thriving democracy. But what I do object to is when elected officials, and in my opinion, Governor Perry, and also I guess Governor Brownback, who was there, and I believe Representative Gohmert of Texas was there, what I do object to is when they aren't transparent about their beliefs.
Well, let me ask this, Michael. Okay, I understand you look at this as a political event, but let me ask you this question. If Governor Perry believes in the importance of prayer, if he truly believes that there are problems that politicians cannot solve, there are problems that are too big even for government to handle, believes that the solution to that can only come from the throne of God himself, what could he have done if he wanted to call for prayer, if that was his sincere belief? What could he have done? How could this event have been put on without it looking to you like it was a political event?
Well, he or his people could have managed the event so as they were not calling for explicitly political ends to be achieved.
Well,
so
hold on just a second. Hey, Michael, hold it. Michael, hold on just a second. Hold it. So what you're saying is if you have a sincerely held religious belief in the sanctity of life, that the right to life is a gift from the Creator and it should be honored at every stage of human development, you're saying if anybody expresses that conviction, that would make it a political event?
If they express their desire to enact that conviction by way of the political process, which is what happened.
Well, but Michael,
Brian, can I just ask you a question?
Well, Michael, let me ask just one question, then I'll let you respond. But how else is that right to life going to be protected?
Exactly. That's exactly my point. It can only be protected, if you were so inclined, by engaging with the political process. Thus, you have a political goal that can only be enacted by working within the context of some element of the political system. Therefore,
so you're saying that the only way this couldn't have been a political event is if the people on the platform refused to pray that the sanctity of life would be protected.
I don't think they should have refused to pray that the sanctity of life should be protected. I think they should have been honest that they were praying for a political outcome. And that was denied repeatedly. Okay,
anyway, I interrupted you. You were starting to say something. Go ahead and finish your point.
I just wanted to ask you a quick question. Would you disagree with my conclusion that the organizers of the response and many people in attendance were concerned with changing public policy?
Well, absolutely.
And how does public policy get changed?
Well, their point, Michael, and our point is that we've got a nation that's in crisis, and that the fundamental problem, the fundamental explanation for this crisis is a spiritual vacuum in the heart of the American people, and that God is the only one that can fill that vacuum. God is the only one that can change hearts. God is the only one that can reinstill the kind of values that shaped the founding of this country. That's what animated this event. Now, is that going to find expression in public policy? Absolutely. Is it going to find expression in education? Absolutely. Is it going to find expression in marriages and families and the relationship between parents and children? Absolutely. All of those things are going to be touched. All of those things are going to be affected. Every dimension of life is going to be affected if God answers the prayers that were prayed in that arena that day. And it seems to me, Michael, your worldview is that all of those prayers are fine as long as God doesn't answer any of them by making a change in the political process.
Well, Bryan, as I enunciated earlier, I don't believe that the Judeo-Christian God would involve himself in such affairs. But I think it's fine for people who care about the future of the country to express their desires however they see fit. But I guess I also wanted to ask you, 2 days after the response was held, Governor Perry, as you know, announced that he intends to run for president, or he announced that he will announce this coming weekend.
Correct.
He
On
intends
Saturday.
to run for president.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to ask you if you could understand why, for some of us observers, it stretches credulity, to put it charitably, that this was an apolitical event when you have the potential frontrunner in the Republican primary race.
Well,
holding
Michael,
a massive prayer. Hold on, let me finish really quickly.
Well, I'm about out of time, so make it quick.
He holds a massive prayer rally just days before he announces his bid for the presidency. The prayer rally raises his stature and emboldens evangelicals to support his bid. And as you know, evangelicals are very important within the Republican primary electorate.
Hey, well, Michael, I got to interject here. I get the point of your question, but Michael, you got to understand. I mean, this is an absolute true fact, and I know this because we're the sponsoring organization. The genesis of this event took place long before Governor Perry was even thinking of making a run for the presidency, long before anybody even started speculating about him as a candidate for the presidency. So it was coincidental that it happened when it did. I know it looks suspicious to you guys on the left, but I can vouch for the fact that the genesis of this event was well before any consideration of his presidential aspirations. Well, thank you. Michael Tracy has been our guest, Mother Jones, and writes for other publications. We'll be right back. Focal Point, AFR Talk.